Whether you love them or hate them, by all indications, Peeps marshmallow candies are here to stay. But after more than half a century, this divisive Easter candy has got to have its fair share of fun facts and interesting history. Let's dive into the untold truth of Peeps. Today, Peeps chicks are produced at a breakneck speed of 6 minutes each. If 6 minutes for one marshmallow doesn't sound all that impressive, it's because you don't know how long the process used to take. In 1953, Just Born, the candy company who made Peeps a household name, was looking to acquire the Rada Candy Company, mostly because of its jelly bean technology. But on a tour of the factory, the Born family noticed something that piqued their interest and had nothing to do with jelly beans. Just Born Vice President Matt Pye told USA Today, while the family was touring the Rada Candy Company, in the back part of the factory were these women with pastry tubes squirting these marshmallow chicks by hand. But this was no quick process, and it took 27 hours from start to finish to make these marshmallow chicks. Why so long? It was all thanks to the very lengthy cooling time required before the candy could be packaged. Once Just Born acquired the company, they immediately set about automating the Peeps making process, which included a faster dry time, and have managed to shave more than 21 hours off the operation. Now that you have all the facts, 6 minutes seems pretty darn fast, doesn't it? The Peeps website lists the candy's ingredients as sugar, corn syrup, gelatin, and small amounts of other things like different types of food dyes. What's all that mean? You're basically looking mostly at gelatin, sugar, and more sugar, with a few incidentals, but are any of these incidentals cause for concern? You be the judge. Potassium sorbate is an FDA-approved preservative, and it keeps those squishy marshmallows squishy longer. Honestly, Peeps without this preservative probably wouldn't be great. Food dyes, though also approved for use by the FDA, have long been controversial, and studies have suggested the possibility of some links between them and hyperactivity in children. Overall, though, food dye has not been proven to be dangerous to most people. How about these mysterious natural flavors? An expert at the Environmental Working Group told Women's Health that this doesn't necessarily refer to real flavors, saying, "Whether they are natural or artificial flavors doesn't matter. We consider them the same. It's often a secret mixture of chemicals that manipulate the taste of food. There are problems with the lack of disclosure from companies about what's really in them." Did you really think Peeps wouldn't contain some chemicals? Sure. But what about those rumors? You know the ones. You may have heard a rumor that carnauba wax, one of those ingredients of Peeps, is the very same ingredient used in car wax. And this is one rumor that's more than urban legend because it's true. However, it's probably not as bad as it sounds. Not only is carnauba wax approved by the FDA for human consumption, but according to Snopes, the amount used in candy is fairly minuscule. Despite what it might sound like, it's got nothing in common with taking down a spoonful of turtle wax.
Wax on, right hand. Wax off, left hand. Wax on, wax off.
And because of its high melting point, it's actually not even absorbed by our bodies, but that leads us to one slightly creepy issue. Carnauba wax is typically used to give candy a sheen or a hard, shiny surface, and in Peeps, it's what makes those brown eyes so shiny. When a pair of Emory scientists put the candy through a barrage of tests to determine its indestructibility, they stumbled onto something disconcerting about those eyes. After taking an hour-long bath in phenol, a protein-dissolving solvent, the marshmallow was all but gone. The only thing that remained? A pair of wax eyes bobbing in the phenol intact. The same eyes that will travel through your digestive system, also intact. So while that wax may not be as harmful as you might have thought, it's a whole lot more nightmarish. Curious about how Peeps are made? Since the factory isn't open for public tours, we'll need a little help with this one. Today, got a look behind the scenes at the Peeps factory in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and followed the marshmallow chicks on their journey from start to finish. In just those few minutes, the ingredients get mixed together in huge drums, and it's then pumped with air to ensure a fluffy result. The mixture is then extruded onto conveyor belts in their familiar shapes before passing through a shower of colored sugar. After the sugar shower, a special laser passes above the candy, adding eyes in just the right spot, and then it's into the packages they go. The entire 6-minute process is automated, and because it's so fast, Just Born is able to produce an average of 5.5 million Peeps a day. As you might have guessed, with numbers like that, the marshmallow treat has held the title of #1 non-chocolate Easter candy for more than 20 years. Believe it or not, fresh from the package Peeps aren't for everyone, and there are more fans of stale Peeps out there than you might think. According to Just Born VP Matthew Pye, between 25 and 30% of consumers actually prefer to have their Peeps when they're a little stale. With those kind of numbers, should we expect aged marshmallows to hit shelves soon? Nope, says Pye. They can't afford to disappoint that 70 to 75% of customers who prefer them fresh. If we were to produce a stale Peep, we couldn't satisfy what the people want. We let the consumer do it themselves.
Really?
From God?
Yes. They're from God, yes.
Thank you.
Peeps contain gelatin, and that shouldn't be news to anyone who has ever eaten a marshmallow. Thanks to the kind of gelatin Just Born uses, though, vegans and vegetarians will want to steer clear of the Easter treat. According to the company's website, gelatin is a protein-rich gelling agent obtained by partial hydrolysis of collagen. It is derived from the skin, connective tissue, and bones of animals. We use pork-derived gelatin in our Peeps marshmallow to achieve a light, soft texture. But with the advent of vegan and vegetarian-friendly gelatins now available, why hasn't Just Born at least put out an alternative Peeps product for their plant-based fans? That's one of the frequently asked questions the company receives, but they explain that they just haven't found an alternative that keeps Peeps unchanged. Maybe next year? Maybe this isn't something you've ever wondered. Maybe it is. The good news is, unless you really want to, you don't have to find out for yourself how many Peeps a human can fit inside their mouth at once, because someone did it for you. World record website Record Setter, which tracks some, shall we say, unique achievements, has been tracking attempts at most Peeps fit in open mouth since 2012. The original record holder managed to cram 10 Peeps into his mouth, but that record has since been broken in 2017 when the number was upped to 14. And speaking of Peeps eating records, 2017 was the same year professional competitive eater Matt Stoney broke the world record at the World Peeps Eating Championship by taking down 255 of the marshmallow candies in just 5 minutes. Considering it might take some people 5 minutes to choke down one, that's an impressive feat. Nobody has lukewarm feelings about Peeps. You either salivate at the very thought of the sugar-coated marshmallows, or you're filled with instant rage. And those who fall into the latter camp let the world know it. It's like clockwork, and the moment the seasons change, you'll see a certain meme start making the rounds. How to eat Peeps? Throw them in the trash can. And there are plenty of Peeps-hating hashtags to choose from for your caption. Hashtag Peeps Massacre, hashtag Death to Peeps, hashtag I Hate Peeps, all dedicated to showcasing the many ways you can decapitate, mutilate, or otherwise maim those oh-so-adorable chicks and bunnies. From a simple death to elaborate scenes of Peep carnage, Peep haters seem to get into it with more zeal than others do with your usual maligned snacks. When was the last time you saw someone get so worked up over circus peanuts or candy corn? What do you get when you throw some Peeps onto an unsuspecting pizza? Pizza, otherwise known as the pizza absolutely nobody asked for, ever. It seems like every Easter someone on the internet discovers pizza, but to properly lay the blame and/or credit, we have to go back to 2010, when Serious Eats columnist Adam Cuban debuted his springtime mashup. The pizza is exactly what it looks like. A plain cheese pizza, cooked almost completely, then topped with Peeps and cooked for another minute to get the marshmallows nice and melty. If we're to believe Cuban, it isn't nearly as terrible as those Peep haters might believe. What's good for the goose isn't always good for the gander, though. In 2017, SB Nation Charlotte Wilder decided to hop on the Pizza bandwagon, and her review was decidedly less enthusiastic than Cuban's. She said, "It tasted exactly like you think it would. A Peep on top of pizza, which is disgusting." When limited edition Peeps Oreos, complete with neon pink marshmallow-flavored cream, hit the shelves in 2017, fans of the Easter candy were quick to gobble them up. But it didn't take long before an unsettling trend was noticed. Turns out the bright pink cream had a surprising side effect: bright pink poop. Those experiencing this phenomenon took to Twitter to air their dirty laundry, along with others who didn't have that particular issue but experienced other side effects like a stained pink tongue and Pepto-Bismol-hued spit. Can hot pink Oreos really have this effect on our bodies? According to Live Science, they can, thanks to the red No. 3 food dye used in the cream, which gastroenterologist Dr. Ian Lustbader says doesn't get broken down in the body during digestion. While the colored poop indicates nothing serious health-wise, for someone to actually see this startling side effect, they'd have to eat a lot of cookies. He says that's more than 1 or 2, but let's be honest, has anyone ever in the history of the world only eaten 1 or 2 Oreos in a sitting? What's better than chewy room temperature marshmallows? Warm, gooey marshmallows, of course. Just because you're chowing down on Peeps doesn't mean you can't fulfill your melty marshmallow dreams. If you've never microwaved Peeps, now is the time. Even if you don't want a melty marshmallow, you should consider microwaving a few Peeps simply to witness their transformation. Consider it an important science experiment. In 30 seconds, you'll see those Peeps expand about 4 sizes right in front of your eyes, and then just like that, they're reduced to a puddle. So what gives? According to Decoding Delicious, when you microwave a marshmallow, the water molecules in the syrup turn to steam, and that steam fills the air bubbles, causing a spectacular expansion. But here's where you need to be careful. If you're planning on digging into those superheated Peeps, the center is likely to be molten. That's because the dehydrated sugar syrup that remains once the steam is gone gets very hot and may even caramelize. Proceed with caution if you're eating your science experiment, but don't wait too long if you want ooey gooey Peeps. The longer it sits, the more taffy-like it becomes, and that's the one way to ruin a perfectly good Peep.
One of the best Easter candies is the Cadbury Creme Egg, a classic staple that has been around for decades. So what's the story behind them? Take a look at all of the things you never knew about Cadbury Creme Eggs. If you're a Cadbury Creme Egg superfan, then you probably already know that Cadbury is a company based in the United Kingdom, and Cadbury Creme Eggs are extremely popular there. One reason for that might be because there is actually a difference between the Cadbury Creme Eggs you find in America and those you find in the UK. The New York Times explains that, for one thing, chocolate made in Britain has a higher fat content. The first ingredient in British Cadbury dairy milk is milk, but if you look at an American-made Cadbury bar, the first ingredient is sugar. Sugar might be sweet and delicious, but it's the milk that's going to give the chocolate that extra creamy taste. The Times author tasted both bars and found the British bars were indeed better, writing, "The British dairy milk was slightly fudgier, allowing for a creamier taste and texture. The American dairy milk bar left a less pleasing coating and somewhat of a stale aftertaste." So, does that mean you should stop buying American-made Cadbury eggs and only buy ones made in the UK? Maybe, but unfortunately you can't do that unless you travel abroad. The sale of British-made Cadbury Creme Eggs is actually banned in the United States, and while you're in America, you can only buy American-made Cadbury chocolate. Disagreements between British Cadbury importers and America's Hershey Company began in 2015. Basically, Hershey has the rights to the Cadbury Creme Egg recipe and can make their own American version in the States, and didn't want British importers bringing in the good stuff to compete with their American version. The British agreed to stop importing candies that would compete with Hershey's, and sadly that included Cadbury Creme Eggs. So yes, you can thank Hershey's for the fact that you won't be able to find real British cream eggs anywhere in the States, along with any other truly authentic Cadbury products. According to the New York Times, it didn't go over well with fans of the tried and true originals. Have you ever wondered what exactly the cream inside even is? The white and yellow mix, so carefully put together to look like the white and yolk of an actual egg, almost doesn't look natural. That's because it kind of isn't. According to Huffington Post, it's just liquid fondant, and that's the stuff used to make really cool designs on cakes and other baked goods. It's also the same liquidy goodness you'll see on the inside of chocolate-covered cherry cordials. Fondant is typically made with only 3 ingredients: water, granulated sugar, and corn syrup, but for Cadbury Creme Eggs, it's also dyed with food coloring to look like the inside of an egg. So yes, when you eat a Cadbury Creme Egg, you are essentially just eating a chocolate shell filled with liquid sugar. Healthy? No. Delicious? Yes.
I think tonight's gonna be my night.
If you've ever studied the inside of a Cadbury Creme Egg, you'll know that they look pretty cool. The mix of white and yellow cream inside really does resemble an actual egg, so how do they put these together? It's more complicated than just filling 2 pieces of hollow chocolate with cream. The Daily Mail spoke to Cadbury executive Tony Billsborough, who said, "The process of making the cream egg was a eureka moment and is not done in the way that most Easter eggs are formed. Basically, here's how it goes down. Liquid milk is poured into a half-egg shape where it is then leveled. Immediately afterwards, a blob of white fondant goes in the still melted chocolate. Then a smaller blob of orange fondant is added to that. The other side of the egg is just chocolate and white fondant. While both sides are still liquid and melted, they get molded together. Even though the inner filling and outside shell are all liquid at the same time, they don't mix together because the fondant is more dense than the chocolate. Or is it Easter magic? The year 2015 wasn't just the year that Hershey forced British Cadbury candy out of the United States, it was also the year one company made a major change to the recipe that sent fans reeling. In the UK, The Sun reported that the company's owner, Kraft Foods, quietly changed the recipe for Cadbury Creme Eggs. They stopped using Cadbury's dairy milk for the outer shell and started using something described as a standard cocoa mix chocolate. Insane, right? A spokesperson for Mondelez, Kraft's confectionery division, told The Sun, "It's no longer dairy milk. It's similar, but not exactly dairy milk. We tested the new one with consumers consumers, it was found to be the best one for the cream egg, which is why we've used it this year. The switch was just adding insult to injury because the company had already changed standard boxes of 6 Cadbury cream eggs to 5-packs without lowering the price. Combine the two, and they had extremely angry fans on their hands. The backlash was real, and some even started a Change.org petition to switch back to the old recipe. While loyal fans condemned the new, not-so-smooth texture of the remodeled eggs, Mondelez continued to defend their decision in a not-so-diplomatic way, pointing out the cream egg has never been called the Cadbury's Dairy Milk cream egg. Anger about the change to the UK Cadbury cream egg recipe was heard around the world as furious fans took to social media to announce their disapproval. But it was also seen in profit. The Independent reported that after the change in the recipe went public, Cadbury's Easter egg sales fell by over $13 million, with cream eggs accounting for nearly $8 million of that loss. Still, one spokesperson for Cadbury, Claire Lowe, insisted that the recipe change was not the reason sales dropped. Lowe told The Independent that they were attributing their losses to the fact that the Easter season was shorter, saying, "It was 2 weeks shorter in 2015 than 2014, so it's hard to compare like for like." Sound unlikely? The Telegraph thought so, publishing an article shortly afterwards and saying the recipe change was one of the reasons Cadbury had fallen out of so many Easter baskets. Cadbury as a company is very successful, and they owe a lot of that to Cadbury cream eggs. According to Cadbury World, the UK company makes approximately 500 million Cadbury cream eggs each year, more than 1 million every day, and they export over a third of them. And no, none of those are coming to the US. With that many cream eggs being made, that means there are roughly enough candy eggs for every person in Britain to enjoy 3.5 Cadbury cream eggs each year, according to the company itself. So how many eggs is 500 million exactly? Laid end to end, Cadbury says it's enough eggs to stretch from Cadbury's hometown of Burnville, England to Sydney, Australia. That's a lot of cream eggs. It should come as no surprise to anyone that Cadbury cream eggs are not good for you by any stretch of the imagination, but it's pretty shocking when you look at just how unhealthy they are. The ingredients include milk chocolate, sugar, corn syrup, high fructose corn syrup, artificial color, artificial flavor, calcium chloride, and a small amount of egg whites. Sugar, corn syrup, and high fructose corn syrup are all the same thing, basically. Sugar. So yes, you're eating a lot of sugar in one little egg. Look at it this way. The American Heart Association suggests limiting your daily sugar intake to just 25 grams for women and 36 grams for men. That little Cadbury cream egg contains a whopping 26 grams of sugar, so there's your daily sugar. Still not convinced? If you eat 3 of the eggs in one day, you'll be ingesting the amount of sugar a physician would use during an oral glucose tolerance test to determine if you have diabetes. There's a little bit of irony here too. Cadbury's was founded by John Cadbury in 1824, and he built the company based on his family's Quaker principles. Alcohol was seen as one of the world's evils, and Cadbury offered tea and coffee along with his chocolate, and it was meant to be a healthier, more socially responsible alternative to booze. The real authentic Cadbury cream eggs are a seasonal treat and are only meant to be sold during part of the year, the Easter season. Because the cream egg is so popular and beloved, it's easy to wonder why Cadbury wouldn't want to capitalize on that as much as possible.
These eggs show up in January like newly signed gym memberships or movie theatres full of films that will never win Oscars. But why?
Cadbury's Tom Bilborough told BBC Radio 5 Live's Breakfast that although the company had once tried year-long sales, it hadn't worked out like they had hoped. He explained, "There's something special about cream egg season. We long for it in those long eggless days of summer and autumn." In short, part of the cream egg success is made in part by the fact that we just can't get one all the time. But you may have noticed that you sometimes see Cadbury cream eggs available during other times of the year, like the limited edition Halloween Scream egg. Cadbury cream eggs being sold outside of that pocket of time between Christmas holidays and Easter are likely just the American version of the candy. Doesn't sound so bad to be enjoying the copycat version now, does it? When it comes to eating Cadbury cream eggs, people don't just unwrap them and take a bite. There are actually tons of creative and interesting ways you can enjoy a Cadbury cream egg, and one notable and innovative way to eat them is referred to as the espresso. Love Cadbury eggs? Love coffee? If you've answered yes to both questions, you'll need to try the espresso. It's essentially an espresso poured into a hollow chocolate Cadbury egg, and when the hot coffee hits the egg, the chocolate melts and mixes with the espresso to become almost like a little latte. The espresso trend started in Australia and New Zealand and took off on social media. It just goes to show that sometimes social media can be used for good. If you were wondering just how popular Cadbury actually is in the UK, here's your answer. There is a Cadbury World you can go to, like the British version of Hershey Park or Disney World. It's basically a theme park focused on all things Cadbury, and there is so much to do there aside from just eating chocolate, although you'll do plenty of that. Some activities include getting the full chocolatier experience, where you can learn everything you need to know about how to make chocolate. You can have an afternoon tea at the Cadbury Cafe, where you can enjoy exclusive recipes, and then go shopping at the world's biggest Cadbury shop, where you'll definitely get your chocolate fix. There are also lots of exhibits and events where you can learn more about the history of Cadbury and chocolate as a whole, and 3D experiences, like a virtual ride on a roller coaster. Jealous yet? That's not the only cream egg-themed paradise that's popped up. In 2016, a massive cream egg cafe showed up on the street of London, Soho. It featured traditional menu items like toasties and tray bakes, all with a cream egg twist, and Dublin's done them one better. Their cream egg cafe is much more regular. It's reappeared for several years, and it's just as delicious.
They just don't make candy like they used to. From gum made into weird shapes to ultra-sour treats, the candy from our childhood brings us an instant rush of nostalgia. Here are the retro candies we miss the most. Bazooka gum was hard as a rock, and the flavor lasted less than a minute. But what else could you buy with the 5 cents in your pocket left over from lunch? It made your jaw ache, but those few seconds of flavor and the resulting bubbles you could blow were totally worth it. Plus, there was the novelty of the comics inside, featuring the adventures of Bazooka Joe and his trademark eye patch. That alone made this classic candy a favorite of kids everywhere.
Jerry, don't do that. That is so annoying.
Bazooka Joe.
Even though this classic gum, which was first sold in the 40s, is still on shelves in some stores, it's virtually unrecognizable. The red, white, and blue packaging has been replaced with pastel colors, and those comics we loved have been gone since 2012. In their place, you'll now find puzzles and brain teasers with codes to unlock online video games. There was probably no candy parents hated more than Whistle Pops, the sucker that actually was a working whistle when you first unwrapped it. As some respite for adult ears everywhere, the holes closed up and the whistle stopped functioning not long after it hit your tongue.
It's a lollipop with a on the top.
Though the original Whistle Pops were discontinued, Chupa Chups has reintroduced them under the name Melody Whistle Pops. Despite their coolness, however, they're nowhere near as widely available as they were once upon a time. You can still find them if you're willing to look, but we're still waiting for a wider comeback. In the early 90s, there was one surefire way to prove your toughness to your friends: the Cry Baby Challenge. The packaging claimed the extreme sourness of this bubblegum lasted about 40 seconds, but it seemed so much longer than that when it was your cheeks taking the beating. You ruled the playground if you put more than one in your mouth at the same time, but you couldn't let anyone see the tears in your eyes. Kids still love to test themselves with sour candy, but unfortunately, Crybaby is no longer the king of the playground. It's hard to find Crybaby gum today, maybe because today's parents remember their own playground pain and don't want their kids going through the same thing. There was literally nothing satisfying about eating candy buttons. All the fun was in mindlessly peeling the brightly colored sugar dots off the paper. Unfortunately, that meant you usually ate about as much paper as you did candy. Candy buttons by Necco disappeared when the company went out of business in 2018. The new owners are making the candy buttons on Necco's old equipment, but they're not as widely available as they once were, and they're nowhere near as cool. If you have a craving for these retro candies, your best bet is a specialty shop or vintage candy store. Kids today just don't have the patience for Jawbusters, which were first sold in 1919. Willy Wonka's everlasting gobstoppers had nothing on these candies. You didn't chew them, you didn't really suck on them either. You just kind of held them in your mouth until they disappeared or your cheek went numb, whichever happened first. Plus, the flavor tended to wear off after about 5 minutes, so you sometimes forgot it was even in there until you started drooling on yourself. Did anyone ever actually get to the end of one of these everlasting Jawbuster candies? We sure didn't, and we'd like them to make a comeback so we can try again. Once upon a time, you could get 2 different kinds of candy cigarettes at your local drugstore. One was pink bubblegum wrapped in paper, and the other was hard, chalky white candy. Plus, they were usually lined up next to bubblegum cigars and shredded bubblegum that was supposed to look like chewing tobacco, all designed to make you feel like a grown-up as you worked on your daily sugar intake. Of course, that was back before the big anti-smoking pushes and before studies began to come out linking candy cigarettes to smoking as an adult. Although plans to ban candy cigarettes entirely in the US never quite followed through, the damage was done. Today, only a few companies still manufacture the treat, but now under the name of candy sticks. Every time a child of the 90s saw that well-known paint can on a gas station counter, their mom knew she was in trouble. If they had a dime in their pocket, they were getting one of those pieces of bubblegum. Their mouth, lips, and probably hands would be brightly colored within minutes. And yes, that was the entire point of this candy. It's got the word splash in its name for a reason. We're pretty sure parents everywhere rejoiced when tongue splashers went off the market, but you can still buy something similar today under the name Double Bubble Painters. It's just not as cool when it doesn't come in a paint can. To be completely honest, when Ouch bubblegum was popular, it wasn't about the actual chewing of the gum. The taste was nothing special, and some of us may have actually thrown away the gum as soon as it was opened. No, it wasn't the gum that was wanted, it was the package it came in. Those awesome tin cases made to look like bandage containers were used to store everything from change, to rocks, to actual bandages. Sometimes you'd even refill it with bubblegum that actually tasted good. Hubba Bubba still makes Ouch bubblegum, but the tin case is gone, rendering it completely useless in the minds of many. If you ask a child of the 90s what the best flavor of Laffy Taffy was, there's no question they'll tell you Sparkle Cherry. Something about that crunch of the glitter sprinkles and the sweetness of the stretchy taffy made this a delightfully satisfying treat.
Each chewy piece is exactly 50% Laffy and 50% Taffy.
Unfortunately, while Laffy Taffy is still widely available, it's not very easy to find Sparkle Cherry in stores anymore. You can still order it in bulk online if you have a major craving, but it's not as affordable as it once was. These days, you can expect to pay around $2 for each stick of Sparkle Cherry Laffy Taffy. Nostalgia ain't cheap. Yes, runts are still widely sold in stores, but the runts sold in stores today are nothing like the runts of our childhoods. They're still in the cute fruit shapes we remember, but the less observant runts fan might not notice that the shapes and flavors aren't all the same. The original runts came in orange, cherry, banana, strawberry, and lime. Throughout the years, they've added and removed different flavors, and today they also include apple and grape, and lime is no longer available. These candy bars were only around for a little while. They debuted in 1989 and they vanished in 1990. Sure, the commercials were vaguely annoying, but we were willing to forgive for this delicious treat. So what happened? Some say the family behind parent company Mars had something against peanut butter, so they pulled the product despite its success. We don't know if that's true or not, but even if Mars execs don't like peanut butter, they could have left some for the rest of us. We still miss that combination of salty peanut butter, crispy, crunchy cookie bits, and chocolate coating.
PB Max, we mean peanut butter.
Never before has marketing been so honest as it was with garbage candy. They came in little plastic garbage cans, just like the name suggests. When you popped the top, you found hard but powdery, tart but sweet candy in shapes like bottles, shoes, and fish bones. You can still get them from Canada, but they're not quite the same. The original candy came from Tops and was the brainchild of the same person responsible for Garbage Pail Kids. There definitely seemed to be a theme, and we do miss those little garbage cans. They were handy for some post-indulgence toy storage, and while we might be more likely to keep paper clips in them today, they were still undeniably neat. Astro Pops had it all. They were sweet, lasted forever, and to a kid they seemed to be as big as your head. Plus, what kid doesn't love space? You might not have known this when you were little, but Astro Pops had some serious space cred. They were invented in 1963 by some actual rocket scientists who quit their day jobs and decided to make candy for a living. They created special equipment to make the multicolored rocket-shaped pop and completed the career change of a lifetime. Astro Pops were around for decades after their space race era birth. They were discontinued in 2004, but there's good news if you still have a craving. A longtime Astro Pop fan negotiated the purchase of the rights to the candy in 2010. After rebuilding all the specialty equipment needed to make them, Astro Pops were reborn. You can find them in specialty candy shops now, and fingers crossed they'll be more widely available someday. You're familiar with Pop Rocks, right? It's the candy that was fun as a kid and hurts your teeth as an adult. Pop Rocks hit the shelves in 1976, and they were so popular that General Foods released a spin-off candy called Space Dust. Unfortunately, Space Dust was never as popular as its rocky counterpart. It was essentially a more powdery version of Pop Rocks, but the combination of a distinctly drug-like appearance and a name similar to Angel Dust meant that parents weren't fans of it. Space Dust was renamed Cosmic Candy, but the original name still haunted it. The hype over Space Dust made it super popular for a while, but the whole thing just sort of fizzled out. Here's a fascinating footnote, though. There's a good reason for the space theme. Pop Rocks creator William Mitchell also invented Tang, the orange drink made for astronauts that was later marketed to families. Bonkers were everything that candy should be, including fun. If you're old enough to remember Saturday morning cartoons, you'll probably remember the commercials. They starred boring-looking people who eat a piece of bonkers candy, then get hit with a giant piece of fruit, much to their amusement. While it didn't exactly make sense, it definitely made an impression. The soft, vanilla, and fruit chews were hugely popular in the 1980s and 1990s, until even they were eventually discontinued. Fans were devastated, but there's good news. Bonkers fruit candy isn't back yet, but there's hope for a revival. In 2018, Leaf Brands announced they were almost ready to bring this old classic back to the market. They not only purchased the rights to the candy, but tracked down the original inventor to get some inside information about how Bonkers is made. They dipped back into the old formulas and even took a crack at redesigning the machinery specially made to churn out Bonkers.
Whoppers stand virtually alone in the crowded candy world as one of the few to use malted milk as its main ingredient. Curious about this candy classic? Here's the untold truth of Whoppers. Major candy bars are some of the most heavily marketed and thus blatantly branded food products in the world. For example, most people know the Crunch Bar as Nestle Crunch, or that Hershey's signature candy is its solid chocolate Hershey bar. However, the connection between Whoppers and the identity of the candy company that produces them is complicated and has changed a lot over the years. The product we now know as Whoppers, little spheres of solid malted milk enrobed in chocolate, first became available in 1939 when they were produced by the Overland Candy Company. Just 8 years later, Overland was absorbed in a merger with the Chicago Biscuit Company, Leaf Gum, and Leaf Machinery, forming a new company called Leaf Brands, which produced Whoppers. W.R. Grace bought the production rights to all of Leaf's candy lines, including Whoppers in the 1960s, but then the rights reverted back to Leaf in 1976. Hershey Foods bought Leaf North America in 1996, bringing Whoppers under the famous Hershey's banner along with Milk Duds, Heath, and Payday. Whoppers have been virtually the same product, stretching back to their introduction in 1939. What's changed are the method in which they're sold and their name. The chocolate-covered malted milk balls were originally offered loose and unwrapped for the low price of 2 for 1 cent. At the time, they were on the larger side of bite-sized candies, and thus, the Overland Candy Company called them giants. After a few years, when automatic cellophane wrapping machines became inexpensive and efficient enough for industrial use, the candy became available in plastic tubes of 5 and known as five-somes, likely a play on how manufacturer Leaf also made the candy sixlets, which were sold in cellophane packs of 6 pieces. Leaf would also introduce a line of M&M-sized malted milk balls called Maltettes. So it makes sense why, in the late 1940s, they changed the name of their larger chocolate malt balls to Whoppers. Many major American holidays have a certain class of candy associated with the day's festivities. Halloween has its fun-sized bars, Valentine's Day candy is all about heart-shaped boxes of bonbons, and Easter means the arrival of Peeps, Cadbury cream eggs, and robin's eggs, speckled, pastel-colored, bite-sized eggs made of a sweet candy shell, chocolate, and malted milk. Those eggs are actually a variation of Whoppers, the industry leader in chocolate-covered malted milk balls, and the idea to manufacture them was hatched sometime in the late 1940s or early 1950s. According to Delish, the original robin's eggs were a bit larger than they are presently, and they didn't come with that pastel coating. By the mid-1950s, robin's eggs had taken on their familiar colors and size. Seasonal demand is so high for robin's eggs that Hershey starts making them 5 months before Easter, laying 11 million pounds of eggs in that time, a rate of about 2 million individual candy eggs each hour. And unlike most other mass-produced chocolates, robin's eggs aren't made with pour-in molds, but a vacuum-based process that stretches the candy into its oblong form. In the end, and out of all those millions upon millions of robin's eggs, no two have the exact same speckle pattern. It seems like any time a candy takes hold in the collective culture and palate, it's not long before its manufacturer rolls out some spin-offs or brand extensions. For example, Twix begat Triple Chocolate and Peanut Butter Twix, and Snickers Hazelnut added a new nut to the mix. With the exception of the annual rollout of robin's eggs, Whoppers does not rank among those successfully replicated candy brands, perhaps because the distinctive yeasty taste and grainy texture of its showcase ingredient, malted milk, doesn't pair well with things besides, or in addition to, chocolate. Among the Whoppers varieties that failed to take hold, in the mid-2000s, Whoppers Milkshake Strawberry hit shelves, with a white strawberry ice cream suggesting covering over the malted milk instead of chocolate, as did Whoppers Reese's peanut butter flavored candy. Made special for the Easter season in 2009, 3 other Whoppers milkshake flavors came and went: vanilla, blueberry, and orange cream. Around this time, Whoppers also made a cameo appearance in a Hershey's line called Twosomes, which consisted of a regular Hershey bar studded with tiny Whoppers candies. Hershey's is hoping their luck will change with the upcoming holiday release of Whoppers Snowballs. Franklin Mars of Mars Inc., the company that makes M&Ms and Snickers, didn't want to take his company international. But his son Forrest Mars did, so the younger man went to Europe in the 1930s to pursue his fortunes. He started his own candy company in England, according to The Guardian, and among his products was a bite-sized, chocolate-covered malted milk ball sold by the bag called Maltesers. Maltesers arrived in stores in the UK in 1937, 2 years before the Overland Candy Company started making chocolate-covered malted milk balls called Giants, later to be rebranded as Whoppers. Maltesers grew to become one of the UK's most popular candies, and they can be found as an import item in specialty stores in the United States. However, in the US, Whoppers producer Hershey's actually owns the American trademark on the word Malteser, according to Confectionery News, and puts out a similar malted milk ball product. In 2017, however, actual Maltesers became available in the US for the first time. It's disappointing when your box or bag of snacks isn't as full as you'd like. According to Consumerist, that empty space is called slack fill, and sometimes it has a practical purpose, like how the air in a potato chip bag prevents breakage during transport. But according to Robert Bratton, who filed a legal complaint against Hershey's in 2017, the empty space in boxes of Whoppers and Reese's Pieces went way beyond slack fill and constituted a kind of fraud. According to Bratton, the Whoppers box consisted of 41% air, which wasn't necessary to protect the candy because it came packaged in a plastic bag inside of the cardboard. In a statement in response to the suit, Hershey's said, "It is not possible to view the product packaging without also seeing the net weight and quantity disclosures." A federal judge allowed the case to move forward, but in May 2018, according to Legal Newsline, U.S. District Judge Nanette K. Lockery dismissed it, in part because Bratton just kept on buying Whoppers. Judge Lockery said in her ruling, Mr. Bratton has admitted that, since well before the class period, he has been aware of approximately how much candy and how much empty space was in each box of Whoppers and Reese's Pieces, and that he nonetheless continued to purchase the boxes. Hard to argue with that.
America loves its candy bars, and some of the most popular candy bars date back more than 100 years. But which ones are the best, and which ones leave the most to be desired? Here are the rankings from yuckiest to yummiest. Butterfingers are definitely unique, and like so many unique things, people either love them or hate them. There's really no in-between. The Butterfinger is likely so divisive because of the texture of the candy layers. If you're expecting a deliciously creamy peanut butter experience, this definitely isn't it. As the old Bart Simpson commercials advertised, Butterfingers are crispity and crunchity, not smooth and creamy.
Crispity, crunchity Butterfinger from Nestle.
Nobody better lay a finger on my Butterfinger.
So where does the unusual brittleness in the inside of a Butterfinger come from? Corn flakes. To make a Butterfinger, corn flakes are added to peanut butter, and then a separate, sweet, crystallized molasses concoction is created. These two mixtures are folded together and formed into the bar, which is then enrobed in chocolate. Many people hate the result, but you never know until you try one. Even the worst candy bar is someone's favorite. If you love coconut, Almond Joy or Mounds should be your go-to candy bar. Almond Joy has sweetened, shredded coconut and whole almonds smothered in a milk chocolate coating. The main downfall is the chocolate itself. It's grainy and bland rather than smooth and sweet. But if you are a big coconut fan, you aren't munching on Almond Joy for the chocolate anyway. You just want to get your coconut fix. Over the years, Hershey's has produced limited edition varieties of Almond Joy, including white chocolate key lime and pina colada flavored versions. Most of these variations have flopped, and the company has thankfully stuck to the original for the last decade or so. If you prefer dark chocolate, grab a Mounds bar instead. It has the same coconut center but with a dark chocolate coating and no almonds. If coconut's not your thing, skip them both. Both of these bars are made by the Hershey Company and are chocolate-covered toffee bars. So what's the difference between them? They are ever so slightly different. In the Heath, the toffee is a lighter color and the almonds in the toffee are visible. The almond taste is the overriding flavor. In the slightly thinner Score, the toffee flavor is rich and buttery rather than almondy. And the Score bar does seem to get stuck in your teeth a bit more than the Heath does. If you're a toffee fan, try them both. The subtle differences in the toffee will likely determine your favorite. If you're not into toffee, which can be an acquired taste, you'll probably hate them both. With its bright yellow wrapper and big red logo, you can't miss Hershey's Mr. Good bar on the shelf. But this candy bar is mediocre at best. During the Great Depression, Mr. Good bar sold for just a couple cents each and was marketed as a tasty lunch because of the nutrition of the added peanuts. But it's been almost 100 years since then, and the bar has barely changed with the times. Peanuts and chocolate are typically an awesome combination, but Mr. Good bar doesn't really live up to its name. It's just milk chocolate combined with a bunch of Spanish peanuts, and though it's not horrible, it's not impressive either. There are just a few too many peanuts and the chocolate isn't as rich and creamy as it should be. Unless it's one of the last candy bars on the rack, you can almost always find something better to satisfy your sweet tooth. Payday candy bars were created in 1932 by the F.A. Martaccio Macaroni Company. Production of these peanut caramel bars has passed between multiple companies since, and they're currently part of the Hershey family. There's no doubt that if you love peanuts, you'll love this bar.
It's more than candy. It's a Payday bar. Are those peanuts? Yes.
A Payday is simple. It's a log of firm caramel rolled in salted peanuts. The saltiness of the peanuts and the sweetness of the caramel makes for a happy marriage. But don't ever put it in the refrigerator. The caramel center will become impossible to chew. The big sticking point for a lot of folks is that there's not any chocolate at all in a Payday, though there was a now discontinued chocolate-covered version many years ago. If you like the composition of the Payday but want chocolate too, then get yourself an O. Henry bar. The iconic Hershey's milk chocolate bar isn't lacking in popularity. More than 264 million of these bars are sold every year. But if you've ever tasted high-quality chocolate, you know its popularity isn't necessarily because of the quality. Hershey's chocolate just isn't really that good. It's not very creamy and even a bit waxy. But it's affordable, easy to find, and maybe most importantly, everyone's heard of it. For s'mores over the campfire, Hershey's will do just fine, but for melt-in-your-mouth lusciousness, this is definitely not it. And you don't need to spend a small fortune on European chocolate to eat something better than Hershey's. Other brands of milk chocolate, including Dove and Godiva, are better, so if you have a choice, buy one of those. The Three Musketeers bar is simple. A whipped nougat center covered in a coating of milk chocolate. That's it, just nougat and chocolate. And while some candy bars feature very dense nougat, the Three Musketeers nougat center is soft, light, fluffy, and delicious. But because these candy bars are so light and fluffy, one bar can feel a little unsatisfying. Are you wondering why it's called Three Musketeers? When this bar was first manufactured in 1932, each package contained 3 small bars with chocolate, vanilla, and strawberry flavors. But during World War II, cost-cutting measures forced the elimination of the strawberry and vanilla pieces. Mars has produced other varieties of Three Musketeers over the years, but the originals never came back. Hershey's Cookies and Cream bars are the same size and shape as its iconic milk chocolate bars. But these bars are white and contain little pieces of Oreo-like chocolate cookies. Hershey's replaced cocoa butter with a mixture of oils to create these candy bars, so it's not even really white chocolate. Even so, if you're looking for something other than milk or dark chocolate, these bars are a pretty tasty option that you can find at most stores. If you like the white portion of the Hershey's Cookies and Cream but crave a little more crunch, you'll also like their White Cream with Almonds bar introduced in 2019. These might be a little harder to find than other Hershey bars, but they are worth hunting down. Crunch bars have their issues for sure. For one, the chocolate has a tendency to break into a million slivers upon your first bite if it's cold. But the combination of chocolate and crispy rice is hard to deny. They're two things that just seem to go together. And if you're popping entire fun-sized Crunch bars into your mouth, the shattering chocolate is less of a problem. Nestle sold its American candy brands, including Crunch, to Ferrero in recent years. But years ago, when Nestle still owned the Crunch brand, the chocolate giant expanded it to include Crunch ice cream bars, a clear argument in favor of Crunch as a top-tier chocolate bar brand. Invented in 1964, this candy bar was originally marketed as the $100,000 bar before its name changed simply to $100 grand in the mid-1980s. It adds another element to the Crunch formula, caramel. It manages the perfect amounts of caramel, crisped rice, and chocolate so that none overpower the others. It may not be the most popular bar on this list, but it does a lot right. And because of its name, the 100 grand bar has been used in several newsworthy pranks. In 2005, a woman sued a radio station after they gave her a 100 grand candy bar as a contest prize instead of the actual $100,000 she was expecting. Originally produced in the United Kingdom in 1967 as the Raider bar, this candy bar wasn't brought to the shores of the US until 1979. But it didn't take long for it to become a hit. The name Twix combines the words twin and biscuit, since Brits tend to call cookies biscuits.
Twix is the only candy with the cookie crunch.
What about the $100,000 bar?
Nope, rice and caramel.
Nougat?
No.
Positive?
Please.
In the last 30 years, a number of different unusual flavors of Twix have been released, including coffee, mint, and cookies and cream. Still, most candy bar aficionados will agree that the original variety still remains the best. In 2017, more than $63 million worth of Twix were sold in the United States, making it one of the top 6 chocolate candy brands in the country. Chocolate, caramel, and nougat come together beautifully in the Milky Way bar. Though this nougat isn't quite as fluffy as that in the Three Musketeers bar, it's not super dense or heavy either. But make no mistake, it's the caramel in the Milky Way that makes it special. Some chocolate bar caramel is too hard and some is too watery, but the caramel in a Milky Way is gooey and creamy perfection. Milky Way isn't named after the galaxy. Instead, its name comes from malted milk, a popular drink back in 1923 when the candy bar was introduced. And if you're traveling in Europe, try not to get confused. Milky Ways there are more like American Three Musketeers bars, while Mars bars in Europe are more like the American Milky Way you crave. So if you'd rather eat cheap candy bars than expensive Swiss chocolate on your trip to the Alps, now you know. Standard Kit Kat bars have 2 or 4 pieces in the package you can snap apart. Each piece has 3 wafer layers separated by chocolate, and of course, the whole thing is covered in more chocolate. The result is a wonderfully light yet absolutely delectable treat. In the United States, 192 million Kit Kats are sold each year, making it the 4th most popular candy bar in the country. Outside of America, Kit Kats are sold in a wide array of flavors, including scrumptious varieties like strawberry cheesecake and uniquely disgusting ones like cough drop. In the US, you'll find the original milk chocolate version, as well as newcomers like mint and dark chocolate and lemon crisp. Whatever flavor you prefer, few candy bars can touch Kit Kat's versatility. You can eat your Kit Kats by themselves, break them up into ice cream, crumble them into cookie batter, or use them to decorate cakes. We'll just note here that if Reese's peanut butter cups were bar-shaped instead of cup-shaped, they'd be at the top of our list. But we'll abstain from a debate about whether they're candy bars. Reese's Take 5, definitely a bar, is the next best thing. It takes the chocolate and peanut butter of a Reese's cup and adds caramel, peanuts, and pretzels. Initially released in 2004, this candy bar has struggled to gain traction among buyers. Hershey has tried adding different ingredients, changing the wrapper, and most recently renaming the bar as Reese's Take 5 to associate it with that wonderful cup. Sales of Take 5 may never skyrocket, but that doesn't take away from how amazing it is. Every bite is crunchy, salty, sweet, and chewy. It's beautifully complex. If you've never tried a Take 5, change up your candy bar habits by giving this relatively new bar a try. Mars makes 15 million Snickers bars every day and dubs it the world's best-selling candy bar. The original Snickers bar, first produced in 1930, is still the best. Its combination of caramel, peanuts, and nougat surrounded by milk chocolate is just about perfect. However, you can also find several variations, including the Snickers Extreme, which does away with the nougat. Snickers Almond and Snickers Peanut Butter are also worth trying at least once, although they're not good enough to eclipse the original. Aside from just being delicious, clever marketing and advertising campaigns undeniably play a role in this candy bar's popularity.
You get a little hostile when you're hungry.
Better? Better.
And it can actually pay off on its "you're not you when you're hungry" slogan. It's hearty enough to make it a meal all on its own, yet flavorful enough to be an exciting dessert.
Is there anything better than the heavenly mix of chocolate and peanut butter in Reese's Peanut Butter Cups? Whether you're craving something sweet or salty, they always deliver. Let's take a look inside the history of this classic American candy.
What's he doing?
He's got our peanut butter and our chocolate.
Sounds good.
Reese's Peanut Butter Cups.
You might think that the culinary genius behind Reese's is a lifelong candy maker, but that's not the case at all. Harry Burnett, or H.B. Reese, labored away at a long list of jobs before he ever came up with the idea of making candy. He was a factory worker, a farmer, and even the manager of a fish hatchery, all before he became a dairy farmer employed by none other than Milton Hershey. Even then, the road to success wasn't a straight one. Reese found himself needing to make some extra cash to support his growing family, and in 1919, he met a man at a Harrisburg, Pennsylvania market who gave him a recipe and asked him to make hard candies. It didn't work though, and the candies stuck together, so it was back to the drawing board. Reese tried making a candy bar named after his daughter, as well as a coconut caramel bar, and then he finally started making candies with various centers covered in chocolate. Originally, the chocolates came in assorted boxes, and the centers included cherries, dates, coconut, and of course, peanuts. The last one was the foundation of a great idea.
I love peanut butter, but I never tried it with chocolate.
H.B. Reese always used fresh ingredients for the centers of his candies and Hershey's chocolate to go along with them. In 1917, he started working on one of Hershey's dairy farms before he eventually made the jump to the chocolate factory. He was still working for the company when he decided to strike out on his own. He quit his job in 1923, but first he went to Milton Hershey and asked for his permission to set up his own candy company. Hershey allowed that, under the stipulation that all of Reese's chocolate had to come from the Hershey Company. He agreed, and 5 years later, a simple suggestion would change the course of the company. A shop owner whom Reese was visiting on a sales call asked him if he could make something that was peanut butter on the inside and chocolate on the outside. Obviously, he said that he could, and it would go on to become the company's flagship product. In 1963, Hershey purchased Reese's, 7 years after Reese died of a heart attack. This development wasn't terribly surprising, as Milton Hershey always had some peanut butter cups in his desk. The two longtime friends and collaborators remained close, even after the end of their lives, as they were laid to rest just meters apart in Hershey Cemetery. It's easy to forget that luxuries like air conditioning haven't been around forever, and when you're working with chocolate, heat can cause some serious problems, and it absolutely did for Harry Burnett Reese. Throughout the 1930s, his company was faced with a huge problem. In the summer months, it was just too hot to make chocolate candies. Everything would simply melt, and this was well before there was a quick and affordable solution to counteract that. Chocolate was thus off the table, quite literally.
My chocolate! My beautiful chocolate!
Don't just stand there, do something!
Help, please.
But if the company wanted to remain afloat, it needed to keep employees busy and pay the bills. To find a solution, Reese turned to a completely different industry to keep the lights on: canning. Employees would can beans and tomatoes when they couldn't make chocolate. They did everything by hand, from prepping the vegetables to putting the labels on the cans. Who would have thought that we have tomatoes to thank for keeping Reese's around? Reese's started out making all sorts of candy, but nowadays they focus squarely on peanut butter cups and associated products like Reese's Pieces. Part of the reason is the simple fact the cups were an outstanding success. Family lore says that when H.B. Reese was first trying to figure out how to make his peanut butter cups, he roasted his peanuts until they were on the verge of burning. That's what still gives Reese's peanut butter that distinctive, unmistakable taste. Times were tough during the lean years of the Great Depression, but sales were strong, and so Reese was able to weather the worst of it. But then came World War II, and with it, food rationing. Sugar was on the top of the list of ingredients that were suddenly in limited supply, and even though Hershey shared some of his stock with Reese, it wasn't enough for him to keep up with demand. Some of his candies simply had to go, and in the end, he kept only the peanut butter cup. It was a practical decision that ended up being a very good one, since the peanut butter cups required the least amount of sugar to make. Ad campaigns can make or break a product, and in the case of Reese's, their biggest ones definitely helped raise their profile. You might think that a well-established brand would want to market its longevity, but Reese's actually did the opposite. In the 70s, the company launched a major campaign by pretending that the candy was something new, and that most people didn't even like the idea of chocolate and peanut butter together. How it all came together was a little strange. Chocolate-covered peanut butter candies had been sold as early as 1907, and when Hershey bought Reese's in 1963, the peanut butter cups were a huge hit. In fact, by 1969, they were Hershey's best-selling candy. Despite all that, when the peanut butter cups got their very first national ad campaign, they were marketed like a brand new idea that might seem gross, but was actually delicious. The premise was simple. The commercial showed two people, one eating chocolate and one eating peanut butter. They would then collide into each other and say,
You got peanut butter on my chocolate.
Well, you got chocolate in my peanut butter.
Bravissimo.
After the initial shock, the chocolate and peanut butter eaters would then realize the amazing combination they had stumbled upon. You might be wondering, why act like an already popular product is something new that people had to be convinced to try? Hershey wanted to firmly cement the relationship between Reese's and Hershey in the public's mind. Rebranding made people associate the candy with something the Hershey Company had created, and thus they got all the credit.
Delicious.
Two great tastes that taste great together. Reese's Peanut Butter Cups. Real milk chocolate, delicious peanut butter.
In the 1970s, Hershey launched a new product that was originally called PBs. These candy-coated peanut butter bits were eventually renamed Reese's Pieces. And you'd think that the name Reese's would have been enough to make them a major hit. At first, they kind of were. They had a successful launch, but it wasn't long before sales started tapering off. That's not something any company wants to see, but an opportunity presented itself when Universal Studios came along. The studio had an upcoming movie called E.T., and they wanted to let Hershey know that Reese's Pieces were going to be in the movie. Unsurprisingly, the candy company jumped at the chance to help promote the film. Hershey took a gamble and agreed to give Universal about $1 million worth of marketing for E.T., without even seeing a script.
E.T. Home phone.
In hindsight, it's clear how smart a deal that was. But at the time, there was no guarantee that the hefty wad of cash would be a solid investment. Ultimately, though, it paid off. Sales of Reese's Pieces skyrocketed. But it could have gone very differently. The team behind E.T. originally planned to use M&Ms, but when the Mars company declined the offer, that paved the way for Reese's. Chocolate is great and all, but it's Reese's unique peanut butter that really makes its candy amazing. If you're a big peanut butter junkie, you should know that not all Reese's are created equal, and fortunately for you, someone's done the math so that you know just what you should splurge on. A Reddit user who goes by the name Rusted took a handful of various Reese's candies, scraped out the peanut butter, and weighed it all to come up with a definitive chocolate to peanut butter ratio rating. The findings might just surprise you. The Reese's Small Heart contains the least amount of peanut butter, with just around 19%. Minis also come in pretty low, as they're around 28% peanut butter.
Where is it? Where's the rest?
On the flip side, the Reese's Egg and Heart have a much more generous share of about 60% peanut butter. The pumpkin and the king size come in just below that, with a touch over 50% peanut butter. So all you peanut butter lovers out there should keep in mind that Valentine's Day and Easter are the best time to stock up on your stash for the year. Halloween is a great time of year, but it typically comes with a certain amount of disappointment.
I got a chocolate bar. I got a quarter. I got a rock.
There's always candy left in the bag that nobody on the block actually wants. But Reese's doesn't have to worry about that, and in 2018, the company came up with a pretty awesome way to demonstrate its superiority. This was achieved by taking to the streets of New York City with a giant orange machine. The idea was simple. People would drop in their unwanted Halloween candy and get peanut butter cups in return. The machine was ready, willing, and able to give out around 10,000 peanut butter cups in just the 5 hours it was out and about. And it was a massive hit. Sadly, though, it seems as though that debut was its one and only appearance, although Hershey spokespeople hinted that they might deliver the Reese's Candy Exchange to other cities in the future. Maybe if we all ask nicely, it'll end up going on a national tour soon enough.
What did you think about the machine? Did you like it?
Yeah, I've never seen anything like that.
Nobody's perfect, and sometimes things slip through the cracks. That's even happened with something as awesome as Reese's. But there's a valuable lesson to be learned here. If you ever happen to get a Reese's without the peanut butter, you should reach out to the company via social media. In 2018, an Iowa man named Alex Henches headed over to Reese's Facebook page to post about his peanut butterless peanut butter cup and asked what the heck was going on.
Have you ever heard the expression, the customer is always right?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, here I am.
The company responded, at first telling him that they were going to be sending him some coupons to replace his defective Reese's. But when the mail arrived a few days later, the delivery was something much more substantial, as Henches was sent a letter of apology and a massive box containing about 5 pounds worth of various Reese's candy. A Reese's spokesperson told Today Food, "We're still not sure how exactly the peanut butter vanished, but everyone knows it can't be a Reese's peanut butter cup without the peanut butter, so the brand had to make things right. Now that's just great customer service." Reese's mix of chocolate and peanut butter is nothing short of magical, and it turns out that there's a scientific principle behind it. It's something called dynamic sensory contrast. Taste buds essentially love it when you eat something with contrasting textures, like the smoothness of the chocolate and the slightly crunchy peanut butter. When you couple that with another contrasting combination, like the sweetness of the chocolate and the saltiness of the peanut butter, then you've got a winning team that no one can resist.
It's science.
This principle is also called the ice cream effect, and it's why there's always room for ice cream even after the biggest of dinners.
What do you think?
It's wonderful.
Yeah.
You should be very proud.
Thank you very much.
There's a catch though, as these contrasting flavors and textures are so good that it can make you forget how much you're eating. So if you've ever powered your way through half a bag of minis without realizing it, you can say that it wasn't because you're a glutton. It's just science. Essentially, these contrasting flavors can taste so good that it overrides our sense of feeling full.
What do you think? You love it! You love it!
Really good.
Some classic candies have waned in popularity so much that they eventually cease to exist. But then there are those that have faded in popularity but still continued to be produced, though they can be a bit hard to find. You may not see the following candies very often, but they're still out there. Bit-O-Honey might bring back fond childhood memories of grandparents pulling a piece of candy out of their pockets to share with you and your siblings and your cousins. That's partly attributable to the candy's nearly 100-year history. This honey-flavored taffy with little pieces of almond embedded inside was first introduced in 1924 by the Shutter Johnson Company. Bit-O-Honey bars featured 6 different individual pieces of candy, each wrapped in wax paper, which made them easy to share. Over time, the brand started making smaller, individually wrapped pieces that were similar to other wrapped taffies. Over the years, Bit-O-Honey's parent company has changed hands several times, and these days it's made by the Pearson Company. You're not very likely to find these bee-emblazoned candies in the average supermarket or drugstore nowadays, but Amazon sells big 44-ounce bags if you've got a hankering for the old-time treat. Candy cigarettes were first introduced as a way to give kids an opportunity to mimic their parents' smoking habits. One brand of candy cigarettes was even advertised with the slogan "Just like Daddy." Different brands provided different types of candy. Some were chocolate sticks, others were chalky white sugar sticks, and still others were paper-wrapped bubblegum that you could blow on and be rewarded with a puff in the form of gum dust smoke. The brands producing the fake cigarettes even used the names and logos of popular cigarette companies, much to the delight of the tobacco industry. This not-so-subtle advertising paid off. A 2007 study performed by researchers at the University of Rochester found that people who consumed candy cigarettes as children were much more likely to smoke as adults. In the 80s, when the government began cracking down on tobacco advertising, especially ads aimed at children, candy cigarettes became much more difficult to find. You can still track them down, though they're typically referred to by the less controversial moniker candy sticks. Online retailers are your best bet, like Retro Candy Online, where you can find Lucky Lights candy.
I'm 21 years old. I'm a man.
Oh, okay.
Bottle caps look a lot like the original Sweet Tarts and Spree, but their more distinct cap-molded shape and cola-flavored taste sets them apart from these other tart favorites. Furthermore, bottle caps are also a little more chalk-like than Sweet Tarts, which may actually contribute to a somewhat effervescent feeling when chewed, not unlike the bubbly sensation of drinking soda. These pop-flavored candies originated in the 70s, and while they're good for the occasional nostalgic trip down memory lane, the orange, grape, and cherry flavors pale in comparison to other fruit-flavored candies. That said, the root beer and cola bottle caps are a little more interesting, as they break from typical candy flavor varieties. Unfortunately, you can't buy rolls or boxes of just the root beer or cola flavors. So when you're looking to pick up a box or a roll of bottle caps, Amazon is probably your best bet, as it's easy to stock up on just a couple boxes or to buy in bulk.
Most companies suffered significant hardships during the Great Depression, but for some innovative brands, that time actually opened the door to new possibilities. That's exactly what happened when the Boyer Brothers Company hung out its proverbial shingle in 1936 to sell its flagship product, the Mallow Cup. This cup-shaped chocolate-covered marshmallow looks almost identical to a Reese's peanut butter cup, which was invented in the 1920s. But it stands apart by featuring a whipped creamy marshmallow inside its hard chocolate shell. The Boyer family made these confections in their kitchen and started selling them door to door, and they managed to quickly gain a following despite that humble origin. While the chocolate cup corner of the candy market is clearly dominated by Reese's these days, it's still possible to purchase Mallow Cups. You can find them at somewhat unexpected retailers that have a bit of a folksy vibe, like Ace Hardware, Food Barn, Cracker Barrel, and Michael's Craft. And unsurprisingly, you can also score them in bulk on Amazon. Turkish taffy is not really Turkish, and technically it's not taffy either. Mike Myers would have had a field day with that one during his old SNL routine as Linda Richman.
Franklin Delano Roosevelt's New Deal was neither new nor a deal. Discuss.
As it turns out, Turkish taffy is actually a confection known as a short nougat, made from egg whites and corn syrup that's cooked before being baked into bars. If you've ever enjoyed the soft, chewy consistency of a fresh-pulled saltwater taffy, you should know that that is not what you experience when eating Turkish taffy. These bars are so hard that customers often hit them against an equally hard surface to break them into smaller pieces. But once a piece is placed in your mouth, it softens and becomes chewy, with a long-lasting consistency that doesn't simply melt away. Turkish taffy bars originally came in 4 flavors: vanilla, chocolate, banana, and strawberry. They were pulled from the market for about 20 years after the brand was sold to Tootsie Roll Industries in 1980. But then they were reintroduced in 2010. They can be purchased on practically any nostalgic online candy store, and like plenty of other classic candies, they can also be found on Amazon. Is there anything more emblematic of a classic childhood than the whimsical and weird Pez candies? To be perfectly honest, as a food, Pez is not exactly the tastiest. But that's not necessarily a problem, as Pez's cult-like following is all about the funky assortment of dispensers that can become collector's items. It's worth noting, though, that the original Pez developed in the 1920s isn't the same product being produced today. The original Pez came in a tin, and the candies were round peppermints, not unlike Altoids. It wasn't until 1949 that the company introduced its first Pez dispenser to hold the now brick-shaped candies. And it wasn't until the late 50s rolled around that the company started introducing its novelty dispenser characters. Then, in the 90s, collecting Pez dispensers became a fad, with the candy appearing on the cover of Forbes magazine and in an episode of Seinfeld, and collectors convening in Ohio for a first-ever Pez convention. But as with all trends, they tend to peak, then decline. And while millions of Pez candies are still consumed every year, and new collectible dispensers are introduced regularly, they've faded from the collective consciousness and aren't as readily available in stores. So if you're ready to start a collection of your own, or if you're just feeling nostalgic, the best place to shop is going directly to the Pez website itself. Paper strips of colorful dots known as candy buttons might be more tantalizing than the tiny dots of sugar themselves. There's just something that's so visually appealing about having an array of brightly colored candies to choose from. And while you'd think the different colored dots would have different flavors, they don't. Well, technically they do, but the cherry, lemon, and lime flavors aren't particularly distinct from each other. On top of that, Candy Button's flavor in general isn't anything special. Plus, it's not uncommon to peel little pieces of paper off the strip along with the candy, leaving you with some less than appealing paper flavor in your mouth. So yes, these candy dots are fun to look at, as they fall into the realm of a classic childhood novelty, but they're less fun to actually eat. That said, if you have a sweet tooth, eating a tiny dot of candy one at a time can slow you down a hair while still offering a sugar hit. If you're looking to take a waltz down memory lane, you can buy candy buttons in bulk on Amazon, or you can try your hand at making them yourself if you have the right ingredients on hand. When it comes to candy, there might be nothing worse than circus peanuts. Although, according to an intense analysis by CandyStore.com of rankings and customer surveys, there are two candies worse than circus peanuts: peanut butter kisses and candy corn. So circus peanuts earned the bronze medal for being the worst Halloween candy from CandyStore.com, yet they've somehow managed to survive for well over 100 years, having first been sold as far back as the late 1800s. The fact that circus peanuts continue to live on despite their questionable flavor and texture must be a testament to nostalgia. Even a vice president for Spangler Candy, one of the few remaining makers of the confection, admitted to not being a fan in a 2006 USA Today article. Candy peanuts are typically sold in orange color, although mixed colors are also available. They're shaped like peanuts, but they taste like banana-flavored marshmallows. But even the marshmallow texture is off, as they're chewier than you might expect. The result is decidedly confusing, which clearly prevents them from being massively popular. Despite all those shortcomings, someone must be out there eating these things. Otherwise, how else would you still be able to buy them on Amazon? Think of pixie sticks as the candy equivalent of glitter. They're loathed by moms all over the world, but adored by kids even more. To be clear, pixie sticks are nothing more than flavored sugar dust packaged in a paper sleeve. It's sticky, it gets all over everything if it spills, and it basically turns sweet children into sugar-fueled little menaces. It must have taken an evil genius to invent this treat.
Alive! It's alive! It's alive!
The history behind pixie sticks actually makes a lot of sense. The original product was intended to be used as a sugary drink mix to enable kids to add flavor to water. When marketers realized that kids liked eating the sugar straight, the company pivoted and started selling it as a candy. So it took off as a product in the late 50s, and it continues to be sold today in all four of its original flavors: grape, orange, cherry, and Maui Punch. Wax lips don't taste particularly good, yet these weirdly wonderful treats have nevertheless remained on sale for more than 100 years. Of course, the draw for kids all over the world is their novelty. What rambunctious third grader, or third grader at heart, doesn't want to don a set of giant red lips or evil-looking fangs to make their friends giggle? And once the gag is played out, the lips can be eaten. They may not taste great, but they're sugary, which is pretty much all that most kids are hoping for anyway. The history behind wax lips involves multiple company sales, bankruptcy, and struggles with controlling costs to produce popular products. All that, and the fact that they don't taste particularly great, help explain why they aren't widely distributed today. But wax lips are still sold online and in candy shops nationwide, although as with most options on this list, Amazon is probably your best bet. According to a 2015 Eater article, Necco wafers are practically indestructible. The article was talking about the wafers themselves in terms of how they have a 2-year shelf life and they're not affected by heat or cold. But that indestructible description could also refer to how they've stood the test of time.
I mean, how old they are. What was it, 1887?
Yeah, I was asking, 1847.
47.
Even after more than 100 years, the original candy wafers continue to be sold and distributed today, though their popularity has declined. That's in large part because the US government is no longer buying and packaging huge amounts of the wax paper sleeves to include as sweet morale boosters in soldiers' rations, as they were during World War II. And it certainly didn't help that the Necco company went bankrupt and shuttered its stores in 2018, effectively eliminating sales for 2 years. But much to the delight of nostalgic Americans stuck inside during the COVID-19 pandemic, Necco wafers reappeared in stores in the summer of 2020, and they can also be purchased from a safe social distance on Amazon.
What exactly is the process that makes sour candy so sour? What are the magic ingredients that create that pucker? How do they get that infamous sandy coating? And why do you like it so much? This is what really makes sour candy sour. Sour candies are typically made by adding a powdery coating to a fruit-flavored candy product. This method is the reason why when you bite into a piece of Sour Patch Kids candy or a Sour Punch straw, you get that sweet sensation with a bit of pucker all at the same time. Making the candy in a way that brings sour flavors out right on the surface helps deliver the super sour flavor consumers want, and manufacturers are using more acid to make it happen. Most of our favorite sour candies incorporate one or more types of acids. Citric acid, malic acid, tartaric acid, and fumaric acid are the most common choices, but there may be other types incorporated depending on the type of candy and the flavor goal. Because different acids add a different level of sourness, manufacturers carefully select an acid mixture to create the perfect recipe.
My tongue and the side is so sour right now.
Although sour candies use a number of acids to get their mouth-puckering flavor, citric acid is one of the most prevalent.
And in that mixing bowl, we're adding citric acid, flavor, and color.
Citric acid is a common element found in lemons, limes, grapefruits, and essentially all other citrus fruits. If you've ever bitten directly into a lemon and felt your cheeks pucker up, you have citric acid to thank. It's a chemical process that activates the sour taste receptors on your tongue, triggering that reaction some of us crave. Citric acid is naturally found in citrus fruits, but to use it in candies, it must be commercially produced in large quantities. This is accomplished by fermenting sugar with microorganisms, creating one of the most popular ingredients to utilize not only in sour candies, but as an additive in other foods, supplements, and even cleaning products. Sour candies are known for that immediate pucker hit that comes as soon as you put them on your tongue. But some sour candies, like Warheads, are also known for just refusing to let that sour sensation die down. For some candy fans, that's exactly what they're craving, and they can thank malic acid for that. Malic acid is also natural and can be found in fruits like apples, apricots, and cherries, all of which have more mellow tartness than lemons and limes. In sour candy, it both boosts the sour factor and brings out more of the fruit. It's also often coated in palm oil during candy making, which then melts in your mouth to create a long, slow release of sour flavor. Part of the reason our taste buds react to sour candy is because of its pH level. The term pH stands for power of hydrogen and is a way to measure how acidic or basic any given compound is. The scale runs from 1 to 14, with water measuring at 7, which basically means neutral. The closer something is to 1 on the scale, the more acidic it is. A very strong acid might have a pH of 1 or 2. Sour candies are packed with different types of food-safe acid, and as a result, they have a pH level comparable to battery acid. As it turns out, any tangy candy will typically have a pH around 3 or 2.5 on the scale, while sour candies measure around 1.8. But Warhead's Sour Spray wins the crown as it comes in with a 1.6 pH level. The pH for battery acid is 1, just shy of the Warhead's brand, so it's no wonder the acidity in sour candies causes our eyes to widen.
This is where we add the pucker power.
A big reason we're prone to enjoying the zing from sour candy is our taste buds. Adults have an average of 2,000 to 10,000 taste buds. Most, of course, are on your tongue, but others coat the roof of your mouth and run all the way back to your throat. These receptors can recognize 4 main tastes, including sweet, salty, bitter, and, of course, sour. When a human chews or sucks on any kind of food, the chemicals in that item are released and they trigger the olfactory receptors in the nose. Your taste buds and those receptors work together to create that flavor experience. Those chemical receptors also tell your brain all about it. Once your brain is in on the act, it releases serotonin to help you understand that what is in your mouth is, in fact, sour. If you've ever had a sour beer, you've most likely consumed a beverage with lactic acid, and that same ingredient is incorporated into some sour candies. Lactic acid is found in sour beers, along with some dairy products like yogurt and buttermilk. Brewers use different techniques to introduce lactic acid in beer, leading to the perception of sourness in the beverage. Some methods include just adding lactic acid into the beer when it's bottled, but others utilize it in the brewing process to complement or enhance a sour beer's flavor. Lactic acid is a bit more of a lingering acid, with a more mild flavor, and it's also often used in sour candies for balance, similar to how it's used for sour beers. So it turns out the beer you're enjoying and the candy your kid is eating have more in common than you thought. Sour candies, especially the extremely sour variety that's popular today, are still relatively new in comparison to all the many other selections on the candy market. One of the reasons for that might be the implied danger of candies with names like warheads and toxic waste, so it took a while for sour candy to catch on. Eventually, candy that caused a little bit of amusing pain hit the market, beginning with the cinnamon-infused Atomic Fireball in 1954. The all-time classic sour candy, Lemon Head, soon followed in 1962, and customers couldn't get enough of either of them. The rise in trick-or-treating at Halloween only added to the boom. It wasn't until 1993 that the super sour candy craze really kicked off with the debut of Warheads. Ever since then, kids and adults alike have been on the lookout for the most sour candy they can find.
What's the story behind gummy bears? How did they get their start? And what makes them so perfectly chewy? They're a ridiculously satisfying candy, but as it turns out, there's a lot more to their story than meets the eye. Here's what you should know about gummy bears. Gummy bears have been around for almost 100 years. They were created and popularized by a German company named Haribo. Hans Riegel, the founder of Haribo, was only 27 when he became a trained confectioner and started his company in 1920. Riegel began by producing hard candies until he decided to try a few experiments with gelatin. It took 2 years, but he invented his first bear-shaped candy made of gummy in 1922. Riegel originally called them dancing bears, and they were a bit larger and thinner than modern gummy bears. It wasn't until 1960 that Haribo updated the dancing bears' name to Gold Bears. Then in 1978, the bears changed shape to the shorter, thicker version that we know and love today. While gummy bears have been a popular candy in Germany since the 1920s, it took many decades before they became widely known and loved in the United States. According to Bon Appetit, U.S. high school teachers in the 1970s would bring gummy bears into their German language classrooms so students could try snacks from Germany. As more Americans were introduced to the tasty treats, candy companies knew it was time to jump on the gummy bear bandwagon. Jelly Belly was the first American company to begin producing these little bears in 1981. However, Haribo wasn't willing to sit quietly and watch from the sidelines, so 1 year later, in 1982, their gummies debuted in America. Other brands such as Brock's and Albanese followed years later and started producing their own version of gummy bears. Have you ever grabbed a handful of gummy bears and picked out all of the bears of one specific color because presumably they were your favorite flavor? Then you bite into the gummy candy only to find out the flavor was lying to you? It happens to the best of us. According to Charles Spence, a professor of experimental psychology, all our senses affect one another, and flavor perception can be incredibly multisensory. That's the reason why when we see an orange candy, we think it's orange fruit flavored. Keith Danoff, vice president of marketing for Haribo, told NPR that the company's gummy bears come in 5 flavors: strawberry, lemon, orange, pineapple, and raspberry. Oddly enough, there is a green-colored gummy bear in the mix. But when we bite into that green bear, the flavor is actually strawberry, which might come as a big surprise to some gummy bear fans.
The red one is more gooder to me because it tastes like berries.
We all know that there's something unique about biting into gummy candies. Next to the flavor, it's the texture that we love. But what gives them that special chewiness? Well, much like other classic treats, such as marshmallows and Jell-O, it's all about the addition of gelatin. Gummy bears, gummy worms, and all of our favorite gummy goodies are made with sugar, corn syrup, water, coloring, and flavorings, but it's the gelatin that really gives gummy candy that perfect squishy texture. Gelatin allows for the thickening of a product while still keeping a gooey consistency without adding any color or flavor. Gelatin comes from collagen, which is found in the tissue, skin, and bones of animals such as pigs and cows. Also, this is the reason that vegetarians and vegans should stay far away from traditional gummy bears.
Did you learn that at Vegan Academy?
There's always something joyous about eating a handful of gummy bears. They're one of the most adorable candies out there, and for many, it's hard not to remember eating them as a child. But what if you could take gummy bears and really kick them up a notch to make an adult version? Turns out you can. Just like the magic combination of Jell-O and alcohol, you can make your own gummy bear shots. All you need to do is add gummy bears to a bowl or a cup, pour in vodka until it just barely covers the top of your gummy bears, and let them sit for a few days. The bears will absorb the alcohol, and you'll end up with plump, juicy bears that will make you feel warm with nostalgia and booze. There aren't too many candies that have been made into successful television shows. Sure, there's plenty of commercials for various candies, and of course, they appear within shows, but a TV show inspired by a candy is pretty rare. In 1985, Disney decided to capitalize on the popularity of gummy bears in the United States and produce a cartoon. A group of cuddly, colorful bears make up the characters in Disney's Adventures of the Gummy Bears. The show tells the story of a civilization of bears that was almost destroyed by humans. However, there's one group that still lives beneath a medieval kingdom. Most humans stopped believing in gummy bears long ago, but a young boy named Kevin still believes in them because of the stories his grandfather told him. After being chased by ogres, he's discovered by a group of gummy bears who are understandably suspicious of humans.
I've never seen a human close up before. Sammy, do they really eat gummy bears?
Oh no, of course not, Cubby.
Kevin earns their trust, and they join together to battle the evil antagonist, Duke Igthorn. He's on a never-ending quest to steal the bear's gummy berry juice, which keeps them bouncing and gives people superhuman strength. It might sound a little gimmicky, but the show actually had a big international following and aired for 6 seasons until 1991. When you consider the number of companies producing gummy bears, all vying to be crowned the favorite, it's extremely impressive. Haribo has factories all over the world, plus there are plenty of other gummy goodies coming from such brands as Jelly Belly, Albanese, Trolley, and Black Forest. The amount of gummy bears being produced and sold is astonishing. In 2017, Haribo announced plans to open its first U.S. factory in Wisconsin. According to the Seattle Times, Haribo said it will create 400 new jobs, adding to the existing 7,000 people Haribo employed worldwide at the time, all working to produce 100 million gummy bears daily. The introduction of the new factory was in response to the ridiculous growth the candy industry had seen in gummy bear popularity. According to Quartz, U.S. sales of gummy bears for Haribo alone from 2011 to 2017 had increased to $115 million. Not bad for a little bear from Germany.
Candy. Everyone loves it, and it should be hard to mess up, but not all sweet treats can be as popular as Starbursts or Snickers. Here are just a few of the biggest failures that the candy world has ever seen. Easter is one of the happiest times of the year for candy lovers, with many brands releasing coveted limited-time-only offerings for the season. However, few Easter candies spark fan obsession quite as much as the Cadbury Creme egg. Devotion to this seasonal treat is so strong that even minute changes to the formula can cause an outcry, a lesson that Cadbury learned the hard way in 2007 when it tried to secretly reduce the size of their signature treat. Fans didn't take this attempted subterfuge lightly. Creme egg aficionado BJ Novak famously roasted the brand on Conan, comparing a new, smaller egg with a larger example he had saved from 2005 to prove that they had indeed shrunk.
Look at that! Judge for yourself, America.
After the Conan fiasco, Cadbury updated their website to state, "Since people's preferences vary from market to market, so do our products." A very convenient excuse indeed. Cadbury further reduced the size of its eggs in 2019. This time, however, they at least had the decency to admit it, saying that they had no other choice thanks to the rising price of ingredients. Necco Sweethearts, also known as Conversation Hearts, are a staple of the Valentine's Day season. However, the 2018 bankruptcy of manufacturer Necco endangered the future of this classic treat. Spangler Candy Company, the makers of Dum Dum lollipops, swooped in to acquire the failing brand, which was at that point the oldest candy maker in America and had been in business since 1847. The sale wasn't the end of the problems for Sweethearts, however. When Spangler moved Necco's antique manufacturing equipment to a new facility, the stamp that printed messages on Sweethearts broke in transit. Instead of pausing production to sort out the technical issues, Spangler decided to press forward with mostly blank Sweethearts in order to meet customer demand. Elise Thompson, the managing editor of Candy Industry magazine, thought Spangler made a mistake in being so hasty, telling the Huffington Post, "It's better if Spangler waits to relaunch Sweethearts until the company has the formulation and production process just right, rather than rush them to market to meet demand." Luckily, Spangler quickly got its act together and now prints messages on Conversation Hearts once again. Nutella has an undeniable stranglehold on the chocolate spread market, with the delicious hazelnut topping bringing in billions of dollars every year. Naturally, it only made sense for Hershey to try and get in on the action with a spread inspired by their famous Reese's peanut butter cups. While a peanut butter chocolate concoction seems easy enough for a multi-billion-dollar company to develop and market, Hershey managed to fail at that simple task. A pop sugar taste test yielded mixed reviews for the newest Reese's product. Some tasters seemed to enjoy it, but the ones who didn't had strong negative reactions. Adjectives used to describe the spread included gritty and oily. Many tasters also claimed that the product failed to deliver the signature Reese's taste advertised by the label. Reese's spread landed with a thud and was quickly discontinued. Despite that failure, the company hasn't totally abandoned the spread market. It still sells regular peanut butter that has a more positive reputation. Spicy treats are easily one of the hottest segments of the snack market. A report by snack industry insider Kelsec showed that 95% of Americans enjoy at least mild levels of spice in food, and 38% like hot to extremely hot foods. Another survey by market research firm Mintel reported that 2/3 of U.S. consumers find sweet and spicy flavors appealing. With those numbers in mind, Skittles must have thought they made a sure winner on their hands when they introduced their sweet heat flavor. Strange flavors and promotional stunts are a big part of Skittles' brand identity. They've even gone as far as to introduce a flavor that's supposed to taste like rotten zombies. In contrast to the zombie flavor, however, sweet heat Skittles were supposed to actually taste good. Some food reviewers praised the spicy Skittles, comparing them favorably to more popular capsaicin confections like chili chocolates. Despite positive first impressions, the flavor disappeared from store shelves quickly, as it proved too strange for the average consumer. When the makers of AIDS diet candy were brainstorming ideas for what to call their new product in the late 1930s, they had no idea what a headache they would cause in a few decades. While the idea of diet candy may seem strange to us now, it was actually a hugely popular product during its peak in the mid-20th century. While early formulations of AIDS contained only caramel and a proprietary vitamin blend, later versions were filled with a local anesthetic called benzocaine. AIDS worked on the hypothesis that numbing people's tongues would reduce their desire to eat. In the 1980s, the acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, otherwise known as AIDS, began sweeping through America, killing untold thousands of people. Despite the obviously negative associations that caused for the branding of the diet candy, the company stubbornly stuck to their name. Frank DePrima, an executive at AIDS parent company Jeffrey Martin Incorporated, was quoted as saying, "The product has been around for 45 years. Let the disease change its name." Jeffrey Martin's tasteless and insensitive response to its PR crisis did nothing to reassure consumers, and sales dwindled throughout the 1980s. The product finally changed its name to Diet AIDS in 1988, but it was too little too late for the declining brand, which ceased production before the beginning of the 21st century. As the package says, kids and grown-ups love it so, the happy world of Haribo. The addictive texture and snackable size of Haribo gummy bears makes it all too easy to eat an entire bag in one sitting. For those of us who have to watch our sugar intake, Haribo's sugar-free version of its classic bears appeared at first to be a perfect solution. Unfortunately, no one could have predicted that these harmless-seeming treats concealed an extremely messy flaw. Haribo chose to sweeten their bears with lycocin, a sugar substitute known to have a powerful laxative effect. Researchers have determined that a mere 40 grams of lycocin is enough to cause gastrointestinal distress in adults, with only 25 grams needed to do the same for kids. A single bag of sugar-free bears contains enough lycocin to have this effect several times over. The bowel-loosening properties of the lycocin-laced gummies led to an avalanche of bad press for Haribo online, with reviewers recounting their gummy bear horror stories in hilarious and terrifying ways. As one reviewer put it, "The floodgates of hell were opened and the damned liquefied souls of an entire bag's worth of gummy bears cried as they burned through my sphincter." Gross. Toblerone has always had a classier image than most supermarket candy bars. Perhaps it's because the bar is made of real Swiss chocolate, or maybe it's because its almond and honey filling has a more mature flavor profile than your average nougat. However, it's more than likely that the real secret to Toblerone's success is its instantly recognizable pyramid shape. Toblerone's parent company, Mondelez International, inadvertently sparked outrage in 2016 when it announced that it would make the triangles in a Toblerone bar skinnier and further apart, reducing the weight of each one by around 20%.
You know what, Helena? You don't deserve this big Toblerone.
Much like Cadbury's size shenanigans, the change was blamed on rising ingredient prices. Luckily, Mondelez took the outcry from fans to heart, and the skinnier Toblerones only lasted 2 years. The bar returned to its bulkier shape in 2018, and a Mondelez representative acknowledged that the skinnier Toblerone may have been a mistake after all. Every year, the coming of autumn brings the same dependable experiences. The leaves turn orange, the air gets chillier, and brands release an onslaught of pumpkin-flavored foods and beverages. Starbucks shoulders a large portion of the blame for America's pumpkin spice overload, with its iconic pumpkin spice latte selling 424 million units in 2019 alone. The PSL's success has led to a pumpkin arms race, with companies producing products ranging from gourd-flavored alcohol to pumpkin spice Spam. With all that money sitting on the table, it's no wonder the M&M's Mars company decided to release limited edition pumpkin spice M&Ms in 2013. They're now discontinued, so you can't taste them for yourself, but some would say you aren't missing much. Reviewer Adam at The Impulsive Buy thought that the pumpkin spice M&Ms mostly tasted like a jumbo version of standard M&Ms, with an aftertaste like, quote, a wimpy version of Cinnamon Red Hots. This limited edition flavor only stuck around for a single season, but other pumpkin-inspired M&M flavors have since had limited time runs of their own. The king of rock and roll is famous for many things, but in the food world, Elvis's biggest legacy is undoubtedly the peanut butter, banana, and bacon sandwich. The origins of Elvis's obsession with this flavor combination are shrouded in myth, but Serious Eats details the most popular version of the tale. Allegedly, Elvis first tried this decadent snack at the Colorado Mine Company, a diner in Denver. Their version was truly over the top, with a mess of bacon, bananas, and peanut butter shoved inside an entire loaf of French bread. The cooks at Colorado Mine Company then took the whole monstrosity and deep-fried it to order. Reese's decided to honor the king with a banana cream-filled peanut butter cup in 2007, the 30th anniversary of Elvis's death. Although the review wasn't entirely negative, a writer at Candy Yum Yum said that the cream was chewy and nougat-like, and the overall flavor of the cups was overly sweet and lacked real banana punch. Although the candy only saw a short production run, anything Elvis-related turns into a collectible. You can still buy ancient packages of the banana cream cups on eBay in their original wrapper, but we definitely don't recommend you eat them after all these years.
M&Ms are truly a delicious candy staple, but where did the idea for them come from? And how have they become so popular? We decided to dig deep to discover everything there is to know about these delicious chocolate treats.
What are you doing?
You said to tell our fans crispy M&Ms are back.
Not those fans.
Did you mean this fan?
No.
What about that one? There's a fan in the break room.
For many people, M&Ms are a reliable part of many of life's celebrations. Whenever there's a birthday or Halloween celebration coming up, that's the perfect time to put out some M&Ms in a bowl. And that's all due to the longevity of the brand. M&Ms were first introduced in the United States in 1941 by Forrest D. Mars in Newark, New Jersey. But the inspiration goes back even farther than that. Forrest's father, Frank C. Mars, founded a candy business in Washington State in 1911, and then he groomed his son to take on the job years later. As it turns out, Forrest wasn't too fond of how his father had been running his company, and he had a new candy idea of his own. So he sought out a business partner who might dive in on a joint venture of making little candy-coated chocolates. Forrest Mars eventually paired up with Bruce Murray, the son of William Murray, who was president of Hershey's at the time. In the early 40s, the duo began making M&Ms using Hershey's chocolate under their new company Mars & Murray. Mars ended up buying out Murray entirely, taking Hershey's chocolate out of the picture, thus forming the company that makes M&Ms, as well as Twix, Snickers, and more. Although Mars and Murray began making M&Ms in the 40s, their chocolate treats weren't actually distributed far and wide immediately. Mars had been inspired by soldiers he'd seen eating candy-coated chocolates in England during the Spanish Civil War. He moved back to the United States in hopes of replicating a candy-coated chocolate snack that wouldn't melt in the hands or pockets of soldiers. A patent was granted for Mars to begin the manufacturing process, and he then started creating the candies. The coated treats were packaged in a cardboard tube for easy transport and storage. As the U.S. entered World War II, Mars sold his M&Ms exclusively to the military to be included in soldier rations. It wasn't until the war ended that M&Ms became available to the general public. A lot's changed in the decades since M&Ms first arrived on the market. The original colors were brown, red, orange, yellow, green, and violet, and the concept was simple: a little round of chocolate with a candy-coated shell. But since then, that chocolate filling has morphed into so much more. In 1949, tan replaced violet, and then in 1995, blue ended up replacing tan. Peanut M&Ms debuted in 1954 as little tan candy pellets, only to later use the same colors as original M&Ms. Original and peanut were the only two varieties on the market for quite some time, until peanut butter M&Ms debuted in 1989. Since then, more and more flavors have followed with the introduction of pretzel, mint, caramel, white chocolate, and more. There's even hot cocoa M&Ms, for those of you who want your candy to evoke a cozy Christmas morning. If you've ever stumbled upon Nestle Smarties, you may have realized they have quite a bit in common with M&Ms. Typically, Smarties are found only in the United Kingdom, Canada, Germany, and Australia. They've been around since 1937, a few years before M&Ms hit the scene. Both M&Ms and Smarties are produced in round dish shapes with bright, bold colors. And as the famous slogan goes, neither candy will melt in your hands. But Forrest Mars didn't want there to be any confusion between his product and any others. He sought a solution so that loyal customers could be sure they were eating real M&Ms, rather than a different brand. Thus, in 1950, each M&M began to receive a stamped M. The stamp color was originally black, but it switched to white in 1954, and it's stuck with the candy ever since. The red M&M is a favorite of many candy fiends. Not to mention it's front and center on many of the package designs. But it hasn't always been that way. While red was one of the original M&Ms, Mars halted the color's production in 1976, all thanks to the synthetic dye red No. 2. A Russian study in 1971 linked the dye to cancer, causing the U.S. Food and Drug Administration to dig into it a little deeper. The results didn't prove much when it came to human consumption, but because of its effects on rats, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration banned the dye. Oddly enough, though, M&Ms were never actually produced with red No. 2. But Mars nevertheless thought it would be best to avoid any confusion and pull all red M&Ms from production. The company introduced orange as a replacement at the time, but eventually the red M&M we all know and love came back in 1987, and has stuck with its pal yellow ever since. When it comes to Halloween, it's all about the candy, and the total annual amount purchased for the spooky holiday is astounding. In 2019 alone, the National Retail Federation estimated that $2.6 billion would be spent on Halloween candy, and M&Ms make up a huge portion of that.
93% of American children go trick-or-treating, and half of them say they want chocolate. So bring on the M&Ms.
According to CandyStore.com, M&Ms rank third in the United States on the Halloween popularity scale. That means that thousands of pounds of M&Ms are being purchased and handed out to trick-or-treaters annually. So how can a company prepare for that? Thankfully, Mars has its plan down pat. The company invests 2 years into prepping for Halloween. Employees are tasked with polling customers to see what they'd like for the holiday. Recipes are tested, and then the marketing department gets to work to figure out packaging and displays that will really sell. Orders are placed months ahead of the holiday, with display plans in place to be sure that the mutually beneficial relationships between the candy company and its retailers are everything that they can be. Considering how small each individual M&M is, they're the perfect snack to enjoy, or enjoy a little bit too much as each one quickly disappears from the bag. With so many people out there who love these little candy-coated chocolates, there are a whole lot of M&Ms produced and sold. In 2013, CNN posted a video of a tour through the M&M's factory in Hackett'sville, New Jersey, where close to 2 million M&Ms are made every 8 hours. That's a ton of little chocolate treats. And that's not the only factory producing these candies. As of 2018, the M&M factory in Cleveland, Tennessee was making 300 million M&Ms every single day. And with that, 40 truckloads each day were leaving the factory to bring the product to stores across the United States. It takes a lot of volume and a lot of work to keep all the chocoholics satisfied.
M&Ms are definitely a part of American culture, and currently they're in everything from the Academy Awards to New Year's Eve celebrations.
The M&M's characters have been around since 1995, showing up in commercials and other ads on a regular basis. Around the mid-90s, the candy brand's popularity was starting to flatline, so Mars worked with a marketing agency to take M&Ms to a new level. And thus the talking candy stars were born. Red, yellow, blue, and green all debuted at that time, with red, yellow, and blue taking on male characters. And while they certainly have their own appeal, there's always been something unique about green that has stood out among the rest. Green was made to be a bit of a seductress, with her long lashes, pouty lips, and white go-go boots. Many have speculated that her persona was based on rumors in the 70s that green M&Ms were an aphrodisiac. When Green debuted, M&Ms used the rumors to their advantage in ad campaigns, even utilizing the phrase, "Is it true what they say about the green ones?"
You make Mama proud.
Green has won over the hearts of M&M's lovers for years, but in 2012, her status as the only female M&M all changed. During that year's Super Bowl, Mars debuted Brown, showcasing her to more than 110 million viewers. M&M's hadn't run an ad during the big game for 3 years prior, so this was obviously meant to be a big deal. As was the case with all the other M&M characters, Brown's edition came in a little package with a whole lot of personality. She was introduced as the Chief Chocolate Officer, finally revealing herself after years spent behind the scenes. Vanessa Williams, the voice behind Brown, told Huffington Post, "Miss Brown is definitely the brains behind it all. She's the one who introduced all of the other colored candies."
I'm giving away money to make people like me, is what he said, and I was like, you watch your mouth, she's my friend.
Friend is a strong word.
Let's face it, M&Ms are pretty difficult to eat in moderation. Opening a bag and not eating the whole thing is pretty much unheard of. But apparently Mars wants its customers to keep an eye on how much sugar they're consuming, even if it means fewer M&M sales. When the U.S. Department of Health released its 2015 to 2020 dietary guidelines, it noted a recommendation for Americans to limit their daily added sugar intake to no more than 10% of their overall caloric consumption for the day. Mars issued a statement in support saying that limited added sugar consumption would benefit all Mars consumers. Dave Creme, head of research and development at Mars at the time, said, "We want people to enjoy Mars brands as part of a well-balanced diet. A typical pack of M&Ms weighs in with 29 grams of added sugar, or 58% of the daily value. So it's certainly over the recommended limit if you're eating the whole pack. So maybe you're not actually supposed to eat the entire bag in one sitting." Kim Kardashian gets plenty of attention for the things she posts on social media, including her makeup techniques, workout routines, and skillfully composed selfies. But what about the way she eats M&Ms? In November 2019, the reality star shared on Instagram stories and Twitter how she prefers to eat her candy. And her followers went wild. As she put it, "Fun fact about me is I take M&Ms and I heat them up in the microwave for 20 seconds, so that inside they're hot and the chocolate is melty." This was apparently her secret of life, and it sparked a fair degree of intrigue and debate. Even Today Show host Hoda Kotb and Jenna Bush Hager tried them out to see what the fuss was about.
Oh my God. Kim is right. Wait. Kim is right.
The jury's still out whether it's truly life-changing or not, but this is certainly a new and exciting way to try these longtime beloved confections. If you've ever thought it would be cool to have your face printed on an M&M, well, we've got some good news for you, as it turns out that you can order them and have them shipped right to your door. Mars former research and development director Dan Michael came up with the idea, which allows people to quite literally order anything they want on their M&Ms. Michael worked on the project for about 6 years before it came to fruition, launching an entirely new factory called the Print Shop to be able to produce the custom orders. M&M's lovers can now order just about anything they want printed on their candy in any color. The M&M shop offers 24 different colors to choose from, as well as the ability to add text, graphic images, or even custom images.
Smarties Candy Company celebrated its 70th anniversary in 2019, making it one of the longest-running family-run candy companies still making the same product. We're taking a deep look into those multicolored candy tablets to find out more. This is the untold truth of Smarties candies. The story of the iconic Smarties brand goes back decades to when Edward D. moved with his family from England to New Jersey just a few years after World War II, bringing a revolutionary candy idea with him. D. was already a third-generation candy maker in England. In 1949, the same year he arrived in America, D. founded his own candy company in the United States. Naming it CD Candy Inc., they soon began making the Smarties candy we all know and love today. According to Smarties, D opened the first factory in a rented building in Bloomfield, New Jersey. He moved it to Elizabeth, New Jersey in 1959, and then moved the candy-making operation to Union, New Jersey in 1967, where it has resided for decades. The company was producing Smarties the entire time, and in 2011, it was renamed the Smarties Candy Company, as it's known today. Head to a local grocery store or drugstore in the United States, and it's pretty easy to spot that iconic clear label with red print that says Smarties. But you won't get quite the same thing if you're looking for the candy in Canada. Upon first glance, the labels look identical, but if you look a bit closer, you'll notice a difference in names. They're not Smarties at all, but they are the same candy. In Canada, Smarties are known as Rockets. CD Candy Company established production in Canada in 1963. They were making the same candy known to people in the United States as Smarties, but calling them the same name would have caused confusion among the Canadian candy industry. Nestle had been producing a candy-coated chocolate treat called Smarties since 1937, which were available in Canada but not the United States. So, CD Smarties needed a different name for the Canadian market. If you've taken a stroll through the candy aisle, then you've almost certainly seen Smarties candies, and that can probably be said for millions of other people in North America. As of 2019, Smarties Candy Company was producing over 2 billion Smarties rolls every year, according to CNBC. That adds up to around 30 billion tiny Smarties tablets. And to keep up with that impressive production number, the equipment making Smarties needs to operate 24 hours a day for 5 days a week between 2 factories. According to Smarties Candy Company co-president Liz D., when the machines are running, the factories are producing 1,000 tablets per minute. No wonder the candy is everywhere. Halloween is a holiday dedicated to the ringing of doorbells and the collection of candy, and trick-or-treating is a huge tradition in many households. To be prepared for all those ghouls and goblins showing up at their doors, Americans buy a lot of candy. Close to 600 million pounds of candy for Halloween each year. That adds up to $2.75 billion spent on Halloween candy annually, and Smarties Candy Company has certainly been influenced by those numbers over the years. According to Inc., the candy company's orders from retailers planning to stock Smarties for the holiday come in as early as November. Candy making for those orders is underway throughout the spring and summer, which means preparing for Halloween is basically a year-round thing. Making sure their shipments are out on time for the big holiday results in a bit of a lull around Halloween. So much so that Smarties actually ends its fiscal year on Halloween. Since Edward D. brought his family to the United States and started Smarties Candy Company, the company has been a family business. After Edward, his 2 sons Michael and Jonathan took over the family business. Then Dee's 3 granddaughters, all in their 30s as of 2019, took over as co-presidents. The trio of 2 sisters and 1 cousin had been on different career paths, but they officially made their way back to the company in 2017. Sarah D., Liz D., and Jessica Sawyer grew up in the Smarties factory, and they had all spent time there as children watching their grandfather and fathers build the candy company.
I spent some time out in the factory when I first started, so I drove a forklift, which was really fun.
And as the company has stayed in the family for 3 generations now, the 3 women absolutely intend to give the company to their children one day. Despite all of the additives found in other candy options, the ingredients list for Smarties is surprisingly pretty short. To create Smarties, dextrose is combined with citric acid, calcium stearate, and natural and artificial flavors and colors. Each roll of Smarties features 6 different flavors and corresponding colors, including pineapple, orange, strawberry, grape, cherry, and orange cream. And with their minimal list of ingredients, Smarties can boast that they only have 25 calories per roll. When you think about a hard, pastel-colored candy like Smarties, you might assume that there must be some sort of liquid incorporated into the process to form something like a dough. Sweethearts Conversation Hearts, for example, which are similar in texture, use liquid in their mixture before the candy is pressed into shape and dried. Smarties, on the other hand, are made with only dry ingredients. Smarties combines its 5 ingredients, producing a dry mixture that's primed and ready for pressing. Each of the ingredients has to be ground perfectly, factoring in things like humidity and temperature. If the ingredients weren't prepared perfectly, the candy may not be strong enough to withstand all of the jostling that comes with their production process. Passing through machine, after all, can take a lot out of a tiny piece of candy. The ingredients are combined and then they are all compressed by a punch and die machine into the shapes we have all come to recognize. Each of the 6 flavors are made individually with their separate coloring and flavoring, and once compressed, they're put into buckets. All of the buckets are eventually combined to mix the colors before they head to different machines for packaging. A lot of companies are making changes these days to make room for gluten-free and vegan customers to buy their products. But Smarties didn't have to change their recipe to do that. When it comes to gluten-free candy, each option needs to be free of grains like wheat, rye, and barley. Many of the major candy options fall into that category, including Hershey's milk chocolate bars, Reese's peanut butter cups, Laffy Taffy, and Tootsie Rolls. But many of those options can't claim to also be vegan. With the small ingredients list that makes up Smarties, there's not really a whole lot to them, and that works in their favor. According to Smarties, all of their products are indeed vegetarian and vegan, as well as gluten-free. There's even a product code on their packages to assure those with celiac disease that their products were made in a gluten-free facility, making them safe for consumption. In addition, the company boasts that its products are also peanut and tree nut free, with measures to ensure that they are manufactured in a peanut-free facility as well. Since we spend countless hours devoting our time to our jobs, it's important to love where you work. And certainly, there must be some sweet perks to working for such a long-running candy company, right? You bet. Smarties Candy Company employs approximately 100 people, and their Rockets factory in Canada employs about the same number. And as the company aims to keep the feeling of the family business intact, they extend that family vibe to their employees.
It has to be the bottom line because we all care about this business, but at the end of the day, we all love each other.
The company prides itself on making flexible schedules a priority, keeping what co-president Sarah D. called family-friendly hours. And though that's a great goal for a large candy company, there's something even sweeter the employees get. After a long year of prepping for Halloween candy sales, employees are each gifted 30 pounds of Smarties to help celebrate the holiday at parties with family and friends, or to give out to the trick-or-treaters visiting their house. In addition, a company luncheon is hosted right around Halloween, celebrating the year they've had. Talk about a sweet way to celebrate those who have worked hard in the factory, producing candy all year long. Establishing a major candy company is no small feat, but continuing on that legacy and keeping it all in the family is an even larger accomplishment. According to PR Newswire, as of 2018, only 19% of the 28.8 million small businesses in the United States were actually family-owned. Furthermore, only 30% of family businesses can say they successfully survived the ownership transition from the first generation to the second generation, and only 12% survive from the second to the third.
For third-generation Smarties-ers.
But Smarties Candy Company, now successfully transitioned to its third generation of ownership, can't say that those statistics affected them. And while that's an impressive accomplishment for any type of business, keeping the family ties going strong for so long is even more impressive in the world of candy. According to CNBC, 65% of the US candy market is made up of 4 public businesses, with Mars and Hershey holding the largest market share as of 2020. Smarties has beaten the odds, with the 3 relatives at the helm of the company now, and since they're all devoted to passing the company to their own kids, chances are it will stay in the family for years to come. It's tricky for long-standing companies in the millennial age. While generations of consumers remember their candies for their recognizable wrappers, sometimes it's necessary to switch things up a bit. Still, weighing nostalgia against innovation can be challenging. To that end, the trio of D co-presidents have worked to make Smarties more present in the ever-changing world of social media. They're regularly posting bright and colorful photos of their candies in different situations and showing off giant and quite impressive bins full of candy. But upping their social media game wasn't the only change the co-presidents have made. According to CNN, they devoted efforts to making sure they had a faster candy press and quicker wrapping machine, allowing the company to produce more Smarties rolls per minute, rather than the previous production at 125 a minute. But the changes still don't stop there, since the company switched hands. The D's decided it was time for an aesthetic change for its 70th year in business, switching up the logo to something that was a bit brighter while still keeping the same nostalgic and recognizable look consumers have come to love. The majority of consumers saw that new logo debut among Halloween 2019's candy supply. Those cute little candy tablets are certainly what everyone thinks of when they hear Smarties in the US or Rockets in Canada, and they have been Smarties Candy Company's best-selling product since the very beginning. But the company started branching out to offer other similar products as well, diversifying their offerings. It's important to keep things fresh so you can stay relevant, right? When Edward D's sons, Michael D. and Jonathan D., took on leadership positions within the family candy company, they debuted a few new product lines along the way. During that time, extreme sour Smarties came along, in addition to oversized Smarties and the ever-popular candy necklace. New product launches don't always work, but Smarties has added a few winners over the years that have hung around. The giant Smarties are simply a jumbo version of the original Smarties, wrapped in a larger roll, and additional flavors of Smarties are now offered, including a tropical version. Smarties also produces Smarties lollipops in a variety of flavors and Smarties candy money with imprints of dollar figures on each candy coin.